Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on all of them. Phone lines are now open, 719-247-1313. The text line of the same number, always open for you to personally attack me like someone did. It's nice to open the text line and immediately get attacked before the show, before I even say anything. I'll explain that in a little bit. We'll have more on the Broncos' improbable win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Another little interesting tidbit furthering the idea that this was just the type of game that the Broncos have not won, and now they have. And what does that mean? Like, what possibilities does this open up? So we'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to start with hockey because it is back. We've made it. The NHL season begins tonight. The Colorado Avalanche will be a part of the proceedings. 3 games on the docket. The Avs, of course, will be the last game to be played. So drink your coffee, do what you need to do. Avs at 8:30. Yeah, right. Probably more like 8:45. But the Avs are in action tonight, and they are, of course, one of the teams that believes they can win a Stanley Cup. And I'll get in depth on the Avs as we move along throughout the show, some of the questions I have. I want to start with the X factor for this season. And it's Gabe Landeskog. And I want to play you something from Media Day. And think to yourself if this has the same tone as something that one of Gabriel Landeskog's teammates has said in the last few years. Here's Gabriel Landeskog at Media Day.
I didn't grind my ass off for 3 years to come back and just be a part of the team. You know, you try to win, and we want to put another banner up in the building.
What's that social media trend? Show me 2 clips that give off the same energy. So there's Gabe Landeskog 4 years ago, his teammate, Nathan MacKinnon.
For sure. I mean, there's always next year. It's all we talk about, I feel like. I mean, I'm going in my 9th year next year, and I haven't won shit.
The questionable language is a common thread, but there is, I think, more what I'm pointing to is the seriousness in the voices of Nathan MacKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog. The determination in their voices. Gabriel Landeskog is not blowing smoke here. He did not work his way back from an injury that no one has ever worked their way back from, just to simply be able to step back out on an NHL sheet of ice and collect another paycheck. He was doing that anyway. Avs would have had to pay him whether he came back or not. And when you are somebody that the last time we saw you, you were hoisting a Stanley Cup, yeah, you want to reclaim that feeling. That's what Gabriel Landeskog is doing this for. You know, last year, I guess there's kind of 2 goals that he has. One is, I do believe that there's a personal aspect to this where Gabriel Landeskog, and if you watch that documentary that they did on him, I think to come back from something that no one has ever come back from, I mean, that has to be a motivating factor. Right? These athletes, the way they're wired, you tell them they can't do something, that's as powerful a motivator as anything. When they are stripped down to their pure mortality, which Gabriel Landeskog was, the very real possibility that he would never play again. These are, athletes, we make them out to be more than mortals sometimes. And they may believe it at times, not in a self-important way, but just they're the top 1% or 0.1% of people on planet Earth that can play a sport at the highest level. And that feeds this idea of invincibility. Sure, they pick up knocks every once in a while, but the idea of an injury is going to take your career from you. That's something that I think athletes can't come to grips with. And we've seen athletes hanging on at the end of their careers. Boxers are famous for this kind of mentality, right? They're over the hill. They can't do it anymore, but they don't want to accept that. And so they push and they make their way back. So that's part of the motivation here for Gabriel Landeskog, I think, is for science to tell him, yeah, you're not coming back from this. And he's like, the hell I'm not. So that's part of it. But then what's the next thing? Right? You made it back. Amazing. Now what? Now what do you want to do? Well, Gabriel Landeskog just told you. And just like when Nathan McKinnon made his comments, that was after the series they lost to in Vegas. It set a tone for the next season. Right? The Avalanche have this world-class player that's saying, I've been in the league for almost a decade and I haven't won the sport's biggest prize. How can that happen? Like, there's a level of disbelief in Nathan McKinnon's voice when he said that. Like, how is this possible? And I think what it did was that message resonated with everybody in the Avalanche organization. The players, the coaches, the front office, asking themselves, like, yeah, why has this guy been in the league going on 9 years and hasn't won bleep? And I think that absolutely was the first thing that happened that propelled that next year's team to do what they did. Remember how unbeatable that team was. That team was an absolute wagon, and I think that was the first spark that was lit. And I think Gabriel Landeskog's comments at Media Day are going to serve the same purpose. To say, this guy, our captain, worked tirelessly. And the Avalanche know what his recovery has been like. This guy has worked his bleep off to get back here, and he's not just coming back to say he came back or because he wants to play hockey with his friends. Came back to win another Stanley Cup. How could you hear that from your captain, knowing what he's been through, and not look at yourself if you're someone else on the Avs or the coaching staff or Chris McFarland in the front office for that matter, and go, what am I doing? This guy has come back from something that no one has ever come back from. How can I let this guy down? How can I live with myself if I'm not doing everything in my power when I'm perfectly healthy to help Gabriel Landeskog win another Stanley Cup, to fulfill the goal that he had when he started his road to recovery? And you think about the alternate reality here where Gabriel Landeskog's healthy. I know they still lose Nazem Kadri, but like, what does this look like? What are we talking about with the Colorado Avalanche if Gabriel Landeskog doesn't get hurt? But now he's back. So that determination, that accountability, that motivation, I think that's going to spread throughout this Avalanche team. And I think it's going to spark this team to a great season. But here's the difference, because everything I'm saying could apply to like when Ray Bourque came to Colorado, right? Those guys had the motivation. Let's get this guy a Stanley Cup. But here's kind of where the difference lies. Not just that Gabriel Landeskog's been a long time Av. To me, and I wouldn't have said this, and I didn't say this at any point during his recovery, but when he came back, what I saw was not a guy that was just helping fill out the roster and being this emotional boost. The guy was a difference maker. So that's why Gabriel Landeskog, to me, is the biggest X factor this year for the Colorado Avalanche. And there's a question of whether he can do it for 82 games and then somewhere around 16 more. I don't know. What I'm curious to see as early as tonight, how Jared Bednar is going to use Gabriel Landeskog. Are we going to see some kind of load management here with him to make sure that he's ready for the postseason? Because you saw against Dallas, like, Gabriel Landeskog can help. You want that guy when the real season begins. So I don't know how effective Gabriel Landeskog is going to be for 82 games. I know the emotional lift he's going to give the team, the accountability that's going to permeate throughout this team because Gabriel Landeskog's there, and a constant reminder of what this guy went through to get back here to sit in the locker next to you. I know all that. That's going to be there all season long. I don't know what type of player he'll be for 82 games. But I'm leaving at I don't know, because I was so wrong about the impact Gabriel Landeskog would have last year when he returned. To me, he far exceeded my expectation of what he could possibly be. So why wouldn't that apply to the upcoming season? So whatever I hazard as a guess as to how good Gabriel Landeskog is going to be or what it's going to look like, I kind of feel like, given what has happened, I should probably take that and then add a little bit more and say he's going to be more than that. Whatever I think he's going to be, he'll be a little bit more. And having that kind of a player And I know a lot has changed with this roster since Gabriel Landeskog last played a full season with the Colorado Avalanche. But if they're getting fairly consistently the Gabriel Landeskog we saw in the Stars series, that's the major offseason acquisition right there. That's the big get for this Avs team. I think the biggest question, the most interesting thing about this Avs team as the season begins tonight in LA is, what does this look like for 82 games with Gabriel Landeskog? But if he's the player that he was when he came back for the Dallas Stars series, the Avs are even scarier than what they are projected to be without him. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. What do you think about the Avs' chances this year? You taking them to win the Cup? It is a very crowded field, I think. Very crowded field. And I think they all might be in the West. We'll get into that a little bit later. 719-247-1313. Actor, comedian, writer Tom Segura, one of the biggest names in comedy, is currently selling out venues all over the world on his Come Together tour, and it's coming to the Broadmoor World Arena on Sunday, November 9th at 7 p.m. Get your tickets now because, again, he's selling out shows all over the world. Why wouldn't he sell out here in Colorado Springs? Get your tickets now. You could go to extrasports1300.com. The national keyword for the 5K a day is bond. No first name, just bond. BOND. Text that to 95819 and you'll be entered to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. Why do we call it the 5K a day? Well, glad you asked. It's because we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. So text bond to 95819. I found another thing that made why the Broncos won, I think, but also points to how the Broncos win moving forward. And it was something that Sean Payton said in his opening comments after the Broncos beat the Eagles. Here's what Sean Payton said.
We're hoping it would be a game to unfold with a lower score. In the end, I think we got the better of them in the trenches, and we finished.
I think right there, as opening comments to press conferences are aimed to do, encapsulated perfectly what transpired on Sunday. The Broncos found or showed their identity, what they want to be against the Cincinnati Bengals on that Monday night, right? In that first half, it was exactly what the Broncos want to be forever. Not forever, but this year, which is all you really care about, right? We saw that identity, something that Sean Payton said he hadn't done a good enough job showing his team what he wants them to be, and they understood it. So going into Philadelphia, it was the same game plan. Run the football. What happens when you run the football? Generally, scores stay lower. You control possession, you keep the clock moving, you keep the other offense off of the field. And then with what we already knew about the Denver Broncos and what they have the ability to do, which is hold teams down from a defensive standpoint, that also lends itself to a lower scoring game. The Broncos don't want to get into shootouts this year. You know what game was a shootout? The Indy game. You saw how that ended. Things got a little crazy at the end. Sean Payton doesn't want that. Wants things to be a little less crazy. And I think it's part of the motivation as why he went for 2. Right? If you just take the extra point and it's a 3-point game, now look at the potential range of outcomes. How many different ways the Philadelphia Eagles can now play it on that final drive. But if you go up by 4, now you're taking away, well, they got to get to only one part of the field. They got to get to the end zone. So the Broncos defense knows going in, as long as we hold them out of the end zone, we did our job. It's not worrying about, well, are they going to get to the 45? The playbook opens up for the Philadelphia Eagles, all this kind of stuff. The different range of outcomes comes into play. But it's the same thing when you're running the football, when you're controlling the clock, when you're keeping the score low. When both teams are going up and down the field and it's a shootout, there's a lot of variables that come into play, a lot of things that can happen. This is about controlling the game. That's what the Broncos want to do. Control it, lower the temperature a little bit. And I found something as far as low scoring. 23 points allowed seems to be kind of an inflection point for this team over the last year plus. When the Broncos allow 23 or more points, which isn't really that high of a number, right? 23, you would think most NFL games, teams can score 23 points. Here's the thing. The Broncos are 1-8 in games where they allow 23 or more points. What does that say? They are not equipped to get into a shootout with anybody. And you know where I'm going with this. Teams that are equipped to go into a shootout usually have a quarterback that is capable of being in a shootout. That's where it starts. When I say the word shootout, what position do you think of? Quarterback. Bo Nix right now isn't capable of being in a shootout. So it behooves the Denver Broncos to keep the score low, to keep it manageable for Bo Nix, not stretching him out, making him, all right, now every single drive, Bo, in year 2, you got to answer what's going on the other sideline. That's too much to ask for most second-year quarterbacks. This is not a uniquely Bo Nix issue. This is a young quarterback issue. But also what it does is I think it provides a sense of calm a little bit. And we've seen when things are not calm, what happens with the Denver Broncos. When the game is being played at a frenetic pace, when nobody gets the chance to breathe, the Broncos start making mistakes. To Sean Payton's last point there, that he said in his opening statement of his press conference, we finished. Right? And I think that obviously that applies to we won the game, but the lack of penalties that the Broncos had down the stretch of that football game was a change from what we had seen through the first month of the season. And yeah, we could talk about the intentional ground that was picked up. The fact of the matter is the Broncos weren't called for penalties. Okay? In some games, that's going to be the case. Other games, it's not. The fact of the matter is the Broncos did not get called for penalties down the stretch of that football game. It's a very straightforward, kind of vanilla, not really what you expect with Sean Payton. Right? You're thinking New Orleans Saints, you're thinking prolific offense. That's not what this Broncos team is capable of, and it's not how they win football games. Now you have more of a sample size with the Bengals game, the first half anyway. Second half, I don't like that the Broncos kind of let off the gas a little bit. So the first half against the Bengals and that fourth quarter against the Eagles, it's not sustaining. It's not for 4 quarters yet. But we've seen more of it in the last week than we had in the previous 3 games. This is the Broncos recipe moving forward. And it's a recipe now that has proven to work against the NFL's best. If they can do this to the Philadelphia Eagles, run the ball, control the game, don't commit penalties in crucial moments, let your defense do their thing. We're also talking about field position, right? Don't turn the ball over. Put your defense in a good position. As good as this Broncos defense is, they can't perpetually live in their own half of the field. Right? All of this very elementary football stuff, run the ball, discipline, field position, defense, all of this kind of stuff that is not particularly sexy to football fans. They love And I'm one of them. I love high-scoring games. I don't care much for defense. Every game 55-50, I'm down. But this is how the Broncos win. This is the way they are built with the offensive line that they have. Now with J.K. Dobbins, who, health willing, has been very productive for the Denver Broncos. You sprinkle in more and more of R.J. Harvey moving forward. You take the pressure off of Bo Nix and allow him to do what he's good at, which is not slinging it 30 yards down the field on every single drive, matriculating the ball downfield, relying on your defense. That's what we thought the Broncos were trying to be. And the first few weeks, something went awry. A lot of things went awry. But they've showed what they want to be. They've been able to be that to great success. And now moving forward, this is going to be the recipe for the Denver Broncos. And I looked, and I was not surprised to see that a good number of NFL teams average more than 23 points a game. There are about 3 or 4 that still remain on the Broncos schedule. But the idea is, against the Broncos defense, they will not maybe score their average. So you take, all right, there's Buffalo and there's Indy. We already saw what the Broncos did against Indy or did not do. Now we're getting into teams like Jacksonville, Kansas City, Green Bay that are 24, 25 points a game. Sean Payton is banking on my defense can take away 3 to 7 of those points at least from these teams. And if we can keep most of the teams on our schedule below that 23-point threshold, this is how the Broncos win football games and compete for the AFC West. It was always there. You always thought that's what the Broncos were trying to do. Now you have the proof that it can work. And it worked against one of the NFL's, if not the NFL's best team. 719-24-7, 1313. Reminder that our athlete of the week, our newest nominees, are up for your vote at extrasports1300.com. They are Trey Salas of Mesa Ridge, Anaya Wright of Rampart, Swami Mbaya from Fountain Fort Carson, and Michelle Morales from Falcon. Log on to extrasports1300.com and cast your vote. We'll reveal the leading vote getter on Friday's edition of the show. It's our athlete of the week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. I heard it was Rush going back on tour. That's kind of amazing. Maybe you could use your winnings from the 5K a day to go see Rush back on tour. If you text the national keyword bond to 95819, you'll be entered for a chance to win $1,000. That will at least help defray some of the cost. Text bond BOND to 95819 and be listening all throughout the day, Monday through Friday, because we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day with the 5K a day. Taking your requests. The request line is open as far as what you want to discuss. Here's something coming in from Douglas, who's watching the show on Instagram. Wants to hear my thoughts on Joe Flacco being traded to the Bengals. My thoughts are this. Why? Why? Like, I understand Joe Flacco has done this before. And you think back with the people thought he was kind of done when he was with Denver, right? That whole thing just did not work out. And yet Joe Flacco got a second win to his career. Maybe it was a third win. I lose track. And he was able to be productive in other places. But that was that's a half a decade ago. The Cincinnati Bengals watched Joe Flacco get benched earlier than this is not the Browns' plan. It was not the Browns' plan coming into the year to have Dylan Gabriel start that game in London. They were forced into the move because they had a defense that was performing at a high level and a quarterback who was not. And the Cincinnati Bengals saw that and said, that's the guy to save us. It's not a worse idea than getting Russell Wilson, I grant you. But it's kind of in the same area, right? So you're going to bring in, and not just the fact that he was benched in Cleveland, I think long before the Browns were expecting to move on to either Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. But the reason why they benched him, the interceptions. I saw a stat or a graphic going around social media yesterday poking fun at the fact that Jamar Chase, didn't he lead the Bengals in both catches and tackles the other day? Because of Jake Browning's interceptions, and the Cincinnati Bengals looked at Joe Flacco and the fact that he got benched in Cleveland because he was turning over the football and said, this is the guy we're going to bring in to help us not turn the ball over? But desperate times, right? Desperate times call for desperate measures. And I asked this question of Solomon Wilcots when he joined me before the Monday night game a week ago. I said, how soon until the noise is loud enough that the Bengals have got to make a move at quarterback to make sure that there is still a season to be salvaged when Joe Burrow is healthy? And that time arrived Monday night, that very night. That was the time when it became desperate for the Bengals to say, we got to figure something out or else we're going to be out of this thing. And then what's the point of Joe Burrow coming back to quarterback a team whose season is lost? So I'm not sitting here and saying that the options for the Cincinnati Bengals were plentiful, and they could have gone a number of different directions. But the optics of, one, the Browns allowing him to leave and go to a division rival tells me that maybe the Bengals should have thought twice about this move. And the fact that Joe Flacco's issue this year, what led him to being benched, is the same thing that's driving people crazy about Jake Browning. The interceptions. So do I believe that Zach Taylor is so much better than Kevin Stefanski that Joe Flacco is going to iron out his game and reclaim some of what he had in Cleveland a couple of years ago for the Bengals? No, I don't. But you have to be somewhat fair to the situation and say it wasn't like Cincinnati was going down a good path to begin with. So I get why the Bengals had to look elsewhere. And maybe there's also part of this too, where they look at how down the Ravens are and how the Browns are turning to a rookie quarterback and going, maybe our runway to stay in this thing until Joe Burrow comes back is longer now. So desperation plus opportunity, I suppose, leads to the Cincinnati Bengals making a move. Of a lot of really bad ideas, this is up there. There are no good ideas. Right? And I think that's the situation the Bengals fell into was when Joe Burrow got hurt, there are no real good options. Come on, there aren't 64 quality quarterbacks in the NFL. And once you start paring down the list of, not every team has a capable backup. Okay, so there's a bunch of teams that are crossed off the list. Then you throw in the teams that aren't willing. I'll throw the Broncos out as one. They're not getting rid of Jared Stidham. That's their Bo Nix insurance policy. They're not getting rid of him. And there are other teams like the Broncos who aren't going to want to deal with their backup quarterback. So there's another group of teams that you eliminate. And yeah, you're starting to really be limited on your options. And I'll ask the question and keep in mind that I'm saying there are no great ideas here. There's no genius moves that the Bengals can make to acquire a quarterback where you go, whoa, this is a complete game changer. But given that, why isn't Jameis Winston at the top of that list? Is it now because Russell Wilson is so persona non grata that if anything were to happen to Jackson Dart, they're going to go to Jameis Winston? This is not the best of the bad ideas. That's the way I would phrase this for the Cincinnati Bengals acquiring Joe Flacco. The reason he was benched in Cleveland is the same reason they've been calling for Jake Browning for 2 weeks. So color me skeptical that Joe Flacco is going to figure it out. And look, in football parlance, he's old. And this idea, we've seen it. We've seen it up close and personal with Peyton Manning. When it goes for a quarterback, it goes fast. So what you have seen from Joe Flacco to start the season, that just might be who he is now. I mean, it would be an amazing story if he came in, held down the fort, kept the Bengals in the hunt until Joe Burrow came back. And I guess he's better than Jake Browning. And I know he's better than Russell Wilson. But is this the question I would ask? Is this really the best that the Bengals could do? And the fact that the Browns were like, yeah, no, totally take him. Is that not a red flag? Because given what has happened in the AFC North, could you not talk yourself into having a shot if you're the Browns? I mean, outside of Cleveland, you may laugh at that notion, but look at the AFC. Look at how upside down this conference is 5 weeks into the year. Look at that division and how different it looks because of what is happening in Baltimore. Wouldn't the Browns be interested in having some sort of an insurance policy with the defense that they have? I think in Cleveland, they could talk themselves into having at least an outside chance of competing. And they just let Flacco walk across the street. And there are only a few places in the NFL where you could use that metaphor and it actually kind of worked. They let him go from Cleveland to Cincinnati. That's not right across the street, but you get my point. In state, in division, Cleveland was like, yeah, no, we're good. Go ahead. Does that not tell you that maybe the Bengals aren't finding their savior in Joe Flacco? I like Joe Flacco. And I would love to see Joe Burrow come back with something to play for. I'm skeptical. 719-24-7. 1313. Take your thoughts. Douglas, what are your thoughts on Joe Flacco? Speaking of how upside down the AFC is, if the season ended today, there would be 2 AFC West teams making the playoffs. I think you could pick out one of the teams other than the Raiders that would not be in the postseason if the season ended today. Let's talk about Monday Night Football, shall we? That's next on Extra Sports 1300.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is
Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Appreciate you tuning in, especially those of you watching on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. While you're there, like, subscribe, drop a comment. We'll get to your thoughts as we move through the program. Of course, the more traditional ways of communication are open and available. And I'd love to hear from you those ways by calling or texting into the show. 719-247-1313. You know, it's going to be really crazy once the calendar turns to the year 2026. When we are getting ready for a Jaguars Broncos AFC championship, and then after the Super Bowl, we get ready for the NFL draft, where we're asking the question whether the Baltimore Ravens or Kansas City Chiefs should look for their next quarterback because they're drafting both in the top 3. The AFC right now is absolutely off its rocker. Just think about what has gone on the last week regarding AFC teams. The Broncos go into Philadelphia, knock off the defending champs. The New England Patriots with Drake May go into Buffalo and beat the reigning MVP and the Buffalo Bills. Both unbeatens fall in the same weekend. And then we get a football game last night that was absolutely drunk. That game was nuts. What happened between the Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs, where the Jags ended up winning 31-28. And Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on the broadcast kept saying a phrase over and over and over again. Just one of those nights. Right? And what they're pertaining to is all the goofy stuff that happened, the mistakes that the Chiefs made. Just everything was good. They were called for so many penalties. And then, you know, Hollywood Brown has a clear lane to get the Chiefs into field goal range at the end of that game. He's not even looking at the ball when Mahomes is delivering it. Mahomes throws a pick 6, the pass interference in the end zone. Trevor Lawrence falls down and is able to get back up and still run it in for the game-winning touchdown. Like, there was so many things that just did not go the Chiefs' way in that game. And so that's why Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are like, it's one of those nights. And I understand that sentiment. And it was like every team has experienced a night like that, where just everything that can go wrong goes wrong, except for Kansas City. Those kind of nights don't happen to the Chiefs. It's kind of why they've been where they've been over the last few years. You know, everyone likes to make jokes about how Kansas City gets every single call at the end of the game, and the fix is in and all of this kind of stuff. You know why the Chiefs had the record they did in one-score games? Which is not that uncommon for this Chiefs team over the years if you look at them in one-score games. You know why? Because they don't do stupid stuff. They don't make mistakes. Like not even playing the football in the end zone and just taking out a receiver. They don't let quarterbacks fall down and get back up and still run it in for a touchdown. Normally, when Patrick Mahomes is getting ready to throw the football, the receiver is looking at him. The reason why the Kansas City Chiefs won so many one-score games is because they're not the team that does this stupid stuff. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year's meeting with the Denver Broncos. That block kick was a byproduct of the Kansas City Chiefs having the Broncos scouted so well that they knew one of the things that they constantly made a mistake with, their protection on those kicks on that side of the line, and they exploited it. The Kansas City Chiefs don't look like that team. They look like the team, and the Broncos were just this kind of a team until this past week. Right? What have we been talking about with the Denver Broncos more than anything else? The mental mistakes, the stupid stuff that the Broncos were doing to cost them football games. The leverage call, the J.K. Dobbins' spike, offensive face mask, offensive offside, all of these like completely avoidable mistakes that the Broncos were doing that cost them football games. Chiefs don't do that stuff. That's why they're the Chiefs and the Broncos have been the Broncos. But you watched the Chiefs last night, and I would love to say that was just, it's one of those nights. This has been what the Chiefs are this season. And they have to grow out of it. Hollywood Brown's not even looking at Patrick Mahomes. The one rule of being a receiver with Patrick Mahomes is you always have to be ready for the football. It will come out from different angles. He may throw it with his left hand. He may throw it behind his back. You don't know. You have to be ready. And Hollywood Brown, you know what it reminded me of? Remember when Homer works for like the supervillain? And at the end, you know, he talks to the guy about how he wants to be the owner of the Cowboys. And Hank Scorpio says, it's not the Dallas Cowboys, but it's your dream of owning an NFL team. He's like, oh, it's the Denver Broncos. And there's that right before the credits, there's this dude running and the ball hits him in the back of the head. That's what Hollywood Brown looked like last night. How are you not looking for the ball at all times when number 15 is your quarterback? How are you letting a quarterback fall to the ground and get back up and get into the end zone? How are you not even looking for the football defensively at the end of that game? Part of the secret to the Chiefs' success is they don't do this stuff. And we talk so much about the difference between winning and losing. And we chalk it up to, you know, whatever team makes plays. And I don't want to take away too much from Jacksonville. That throw Trevor Lawrence made on the sideline to Brian Thomas, that was a beauty. Rusher in his face and he falling back and he still delivered it exactly where it needed to be. That catch by Travis Hunter late in the game where he elevates, he looked like he was going to jump out of the stadium when he made that catch. Like the Jags made plays. But so much, we don't like to talk about it, but you've been living in this world to start the season if you're a Broncos fan. The difference between winning and losing is so often which team doesn't do dumb stuff at the end of the football game. And the Chiefs, for years, have been the beneficiary of other teams doing dumb stuff. And that's why they win so many close games. Yes, it's Mahomes and it's Kelsey and it's the defense and it's all that stuff. But when you look at the one-score games, the toss-up games, and the teams that have a great record and the teams that have a terrible record in those situations, the team that's more buttoned up, the team that doesn't commit penalties, that doesn't make boneheaded mistakes when the game is on the line, they're the ones with the great record in those games. The ones that don't are the ones on the other side of the ledger. The Chiefs have become the team that they have preyed upon for years. Late in the game, Kansas City had the utmost confidence that they would be the ones that would not make the mistake. You're going to make the mistake. Right? Close game. Sean McDermott. Let's kick a squib kick. That's been missing this year. Teams aren't making the egregious mistakes against the Kansas City Chiefs. And conversely, the Chiefs are making plenty of mistakes at the end of games that's costing them. And I'll tell you, and this is where you really need to give Jacksonville a lot of credit. Teams aren't scared of Kansas City anymore. And you could say, oh, no one was ever scared. BS. Teams were scared of Kansas City. That aura of invincibility, it's gone. The shield is down. And Jacksonville went into that game last night and they said, we can absolutely go toe-to-toe with this team and beat them. The aura of invincibility, the intimidation factor, it's gone. It's gone. And if the Chiefs, if the season ended today, I know it's early, but if the season ended today, they would not be in the playoffs. If they're going to get into the playoffs, if they're going to have a chance to send Travis Kelce out on a high note, they're going to have to figure it out. They are not going to run into teams the rest of this year that are going to go, ooh, it's Kansas City. That's what it's been in years past. Right? Teams walk onto the field with Kansas City and are already like, we got no shot. Come on. Now every team that goes up against the Kansas City Chiefs is like, yeah, we can beat these guys. The Jacksonville Jaguars went into that game last night and they're like, why can't we beat this team? And that confidence leads to playmaking ability. Right? Brian Thomas, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Hunter, Devin Lloyd. Although, man, has there ever been a gift wrap pick six like that one? The Chiefs are going to, no one is going to do this team any favors. If they're going to win this division, if they're going to go to the Super Bowl, if they're going to win the Super Bowl, it's got to be because they play better than their opponent. Because opponents aren't beating themselves anymore against Kansas City. And you've seen it, like the Charger game, the Philly game, the Eagles are a perfect example, right? That's until they lost to Denver. That's who they were. They were the team like Kansas City. That's like, we're not going to make the mistakes. We're going to keep it close. And you're going to be the ones that screw up at the end of a game. But the Chargers, the Eagles, and now the Jaguars, all three of them very good teams. Games that have come down to the wire. And it's been Philly, the Chargers, and the Jags who have made plays. And it's the Chiefs who haven't made plays and made mistakes. Now, I'm not completely out on Kansas City. I'm not, because number 15 is still their quarterback. And as long as that's the case, they got a leg up on most of the NFL, and I went in a one-game must-win situation. I'm betting on number 15 every day of the week. But Dan Patrick was mentioning this in his Above the Noise commentary just a few minutes ago. the gap isn't as wide as it used to be. Right? And now there was a psychological gap. I'll take what Dan said and push it one step further. He's talking about the talent gap, which is a fair assessment, right? The Chiefs have lost players over the years. Their main receiving weapon is aging. They've lost, right? Their offensive line, all this kind of stuff. The talent gap is not as wide as it used to be. I think it's more right now what you're seeing. The psychological gap is the more important one. Teams aren't intimidated. Teams aren't scared by Kansas City anymore. I'm not out on Kansas City because I still think they have enough to win. And it's like, conversely, I'm not all in on the Denver Broncos after what they did on Sunday. But that the scales are moving a little bit. Both Kansas City and Denver, omitting LA from the conversation, not that they should be because they're atop the division right now, but just talking about it from the Broncos and Chiefs perspective for a moment. Like, what has happened in the last week has to make you sit up and pay attention to Denver. And not in a good way, but what is happening with Kansas City has to make you sit up and pay attention. Doesn't mean the power dynamic in the AFC West is completely flipped. We're still early, but one team is trending in a very bad direction and the other one is trending in a really good direction. Take your thoughts on Monday Night Football, 719-247-1313. And oh, by the way, open up the text line as I tend to do, getting ready for the new day of Drive Time Sports. And what do I see sent in? A YouTube link of the commercial with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Hunter. That was exactly what I wanted to start my afternoon with, to see Lawrence and Travis Hunter. They were great. And by the way, what did I say yesterday about what Liam Cohen needed to do to win that game? Did he do that? He absolutely did. Did he put Travis Hunter on Xavier Worthy? You bet he did. I didn't think he was going to do it, but he did it. And Travis Hunter helped them win that football game. 719-247-1313. Multi-platinum progressive rock group Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour for 2 spectacular shows on Sunday, November 16th at the Broadmoor World Arena. Tickets are on sale now, and for a limited time, you can get their best price ever, $55. So go to AXS.com or stop by the Pikes Peak Center box office to get your tickets to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra at the Broadmoor World Arena on Sunday, November 16th. Babe, wake up. A new keyword for the 5K a day just dropped. It's check. CHECK. Text that to 95819 and you'll be entered to win $1,000. Something we're doing 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. We're calling it the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. Again, the national keyword is check. CHECK. Brett Texan says, you mentioned a Patrick Mahomes, I believe. I forgot his real name, but I like to call him Pick Six. That was egregious. That interception. That was uncalled for. I mean, just go next time, just hand him the ball. Pat, just hand it to him. It'll be much easier. But look, Patrick Mahomes does far more. He's far from the biggest culprit for the Kansas City Chiefs struggles. So as egregious as that mistake was, as bad as it was, he's about the only guy that's making up for any mistakes that he's committing. Yeah, this AFC, man, it's nuts. You got Pittsburgh at the top of the division, Baltimore in the Arch Manning sweepstakes. You got, what else we got going on? New England, Denver, the Chargers atop the AFC West. 2 good AFC South teams, and neither one of them are named the Texans. And then you look at the NFC, and it's like, yep, that team, had that one. Lions, Packers, 49ers, Rams, Commanders, as long as they have Jaden Daniels. Like, yeah, NFC, it's very much what you expected. The AFC is not really at all what many people expected. Maybe a team or two here and there. Like maybe you like the Chargers at the top of the division. Maybe you like the Broncos this year. I thought Pittsburgh would be a playoff team. I didn't pick them to win their division. I like New England. I didn't have 2 teams in the AFC South being good. AFC's been nuts. NFC has been regularly scheduled programming throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. How nutty is it going to get in the NHL this season? Season drops the puck. We drop the puck on the season. Coming up, I believe, top of the hour, the game that we are most concerned with in this part of the country starts at 8:30 tonight-ish. Avalanche and Kings. You can hear that game here on Extra Sports 1300 because we are proud to say, once again, we are Colorado Springs home for both the Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets. So our coverage begins at 8. You want to tune in for that one. So I'm taking your predictions, Avs related or just NHL as a whole related, on this first day of the season. This coming in from the 719. Probably a boring prediction, but I'll vote Panthers versus Stars, Avs, or Oilers for Lord Stanley's Cup. I chuckle at that because that is so what this Western Conference is. In fact, I don't think you went far enough. Out of the West, it could be Avs, Dallas, Edmonton, Vegas. And if the Kings, if they could ever get past Edmonton, what do we think about LA? They did get 105 points last year. They just keep running into Edmonton, and they can't solve that puzzle. But remove the Oilers, how viable are the Kings? I think they're probably a notch below. But man, I just as a thought experiment, I'd love to see the Kings play someone else in the playoffs. and just see. But as I look at Stanley Cup contenders, there's such a difference in these two conferences because I think in the West, you can go with a number of teams because of how much you like them. Right? I mean, there's a lot to like about Dallas. There's a lot to like about Colorado. There's a lot to like about Edmonton. There's a lot to like about Vegas. Vegas has been one of the best teams in the NHL routinely over the years, and now they add Mitch Marner. So like in the West, you're trying to choose between all these juggernauts, all these elite teams, and you're like, man, I can't decide which one I like best. They're all so good. And then you go to the East, because where I will disagree with your text, it's not going to be Florida. It's not. Aaron Ekblad, Alexander Barkov, he might not play at all this season. And he's the best defensive centerman in the league, and a huge piece of what they do. You know, Matthew Tkachuk, who, by the way, is out probably half this season, at least, with his own injuries. Matthew Tkachuk he's a little louder, so he gets a lot of the attention. Alexander Barkov is the most important player on the Florida Panthers. And his season might be over before it begins. Brutal. And you hate to see it, because I would like to find out if a team can actually beat Florida. Now, my preference is I would like to see a team not named the Oilers give it a shot for once. Like Oilers, you could step aside. You've had your opportunities. Let somebody else, let Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, let's see what they do against Florida. I want to see if somebody can go toe-to-toe with the Florida Panthers as they are when healthy, and see if anybody can beat them. Not go against the Panthers with Tkachuk missing a half of a season and Barkov not even on the ice. I hate that. I hate what has happened to the Florida Panthers. But because of that, the Eastern Conference is wide open. Forget the NHL. There was already a little bit of a doubt of whether any team in the NHL could knock off Florida. But now think of the impact of this in the East, and remove Florida from the equation just for a second, because I look at the Panthers like I look at Boston. The Celtics. I should be specific because we're talking hockey. I don't mean the Bruins. I mean the Celtics. I'm not completely dismissing the Boston Celtics this upcoming NBA season, even without Jason Tatum. I'm not completely dismissing them. But are they my pick to get out of the East? No. Same thing with Florida. I don't think they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. I don't think they're going to come out of the East. But I also don't think they have zero chance of doing it. But it's a byproduct, and it's the same thing with the Celtics in the NBA. Like, if you remove the Celtics, look at the East. Do you love any of these teams? Like, you know that the Knicks are good. Do you really like the Knicks that much to be like, yeah, championship team right there? How about Cleveland? How about Orlando? How about Milwaukee? Like, do you love anybody in the NBA's Eastern Conference when you remove the Celtics from the equation? Same thing in the East. If you remove Florida, this is the Wild West. Like, who knows? The Maple Leafs without Mitch Marner? You like them? You like Carolina, who's been banging their head against the wall for how many years now? Are they going to come out of the East now? I've seen people predicting New Jersey. I don't love the Devils. But in the East, it's like this free-for-all. It's not that different than what we're seeing in the AFC right now. With the Chiefs as vulnerable as they are, look at the number of teams that are all of a sudden popping up, and you're like, well, do I love the Colts? No, but why not the Colts? Why not the Jaguars? Why not the Broncos or the Chargers or the Steelers? And it's not because you are enamored with any one of those teams. They are all flawed. And that's the dynamic you have in the NHL's Eastern Conference. You remove Florida, and it's like you got to try and make a case for a team that has a fatal flaw built into their roster. I kind of think Tampa. I mean, Tampa is not as good as they used to be. But when I look at all of these incredibly flawed teams in the East, if Florida's not going to get healthy, if they're not going to have Barkov, I think Tampa, as unsatisfying as that will be for people to see another Florida team, one Florida team steps down, the other one steps up, like how it's been in the East for like the better part of a decade. But that's kind of where I'm looking. Again, they're not the Lightning that went up against the Avalanche a few years ago. But they're a solid hockey team. Vasilevsky in a big game. But the mentality I have about the Eastern Conference in the NHL is, who's the tallest toddler here? If Florida is not in the mix here, like I put up, run through Carolina, Toronto, Tampa, and I'm like, man, none of these teams coming out of the East will be any match for Dallas, Edmonton. Like, if not Florida, Edmonton might be the dynasty of the NHL. Like, I look at it, the Stanley Cup champion has to be coming out of the West. I don't see how any of these teams in the East are knocking off Dallas or Colorado or Vegas or Edmonton in a 7-game series. In the West, it's like, which juggernaut do you like the most? What superpower would you like to have? Would you like to have Connor McDavid's superpower? Would you like to have Nathan McKinnon's superpower? Would you like to have the superpower to circumvent the salary cap and get Mitch Marner to join up with Jack Eichel? It's like these are all not super teams in the sense of the NBA. Not that definition of super team, but like you want to pick out the flaws of Dallas and Colorado and Vegas and Edmonton? The flaw of Edmonton is they can't beat a dynasty. It's hardly a flaw. It's not a flaw that cost them in the Western Conference playoffs. I think there are so many teams that can make a case for winning the Stanley Cup. But it's because the West is loaded and someone has to come out of the East, with Florida now in the state that they are in. So I actually think, getting back to the texter, It's not a boring prediction because if you think the Panthers are getting out of the East with the injuries that they have, that is a hot take. But in the West, your sentiment's right. Avs, Oilers, Dallas, Vegas. I mean, can you really shout someone down that takes any one of those teams and say, no, you're crazy? I don't think you can. I think they all have a legitimate shot of winning a Stanley Cup. We'll see two of the NHL's best tonight, Colorado and LA. 8:30, you can hear the game right here on Extra Sports 1300. Speaking of hockey, pretty big weekend in Colorado Springs for hockey. Wouldn't you agree? Air Force opening up the season with a bang. A couple of them. Denver on Friday, Colorado College on Saturday. If you want to be in the house, and I believe tickets are sold out. I have to double check on that. But I have tickets. If you want a pair of tickets to see Air Force take on DU on Friday night, 7 o'clock at Cadet Ice Arena, be the 13th texter to text Falcons in your name to 719-247-1313. Don't forget to text that national keyword check to 95819. That's CHECK to 95819, and you will be entered to win $1,000 with the 5K a day, because we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day. Add it up, 5K. We're doing it a day. It's more than you needed, but it's where my mind went. So text check to 95819 and you'll be entered to win $1,000. Speaking of winning, congrats to Jesse, who picked up a pair of tickets to see Air Force take on DU on Friday. Another chance for you to win coming up next hour. So if you're like, man, I'd like to go watch Air Force take on DU on Friday, I bet you would, because you should. It will be fun. Another chance for you coming up next hour. This text coming in from the 719. Did Chad Kelly's leg heal up enough that he is still playing football? Was he at training camp for any team this year? Do you think the recent Mark Sanchez story makes Swag look a little bit less like a dumpster fire? Would Cincinnati look at him? What I have to ask this question. Is this Chad Kelly texting in? Are you Chad Kelly? You seem oddly invested in the future of Chad Kelly. Let me answer all of those questions, though. I have no idea about his leg. I don't think Cincinnati's looking at him because they're set. They went with Joe Flacco. They saw him throw 8 interceptions in 4 games and were like, yeah, that's exactly what we need to replace our quarterback, Jake Browning, who was having a problem throwing interceptions. I feel bad for I don't feel bad for the Bengals because they're the Bengals and I know how they operate and they're not an organization that deserves a lot of success. But I do feel bad because with Joe Burrow, they're absolutely a playoff team. And without him, they are just a straight up dumpster fire. You know, I was having a conversation with somebody today about, early season MVPs. Is there a way that we can at least consider Joe Burrow, given what we have seen with the Cincinnati Bengals? Like, how much more impressed are you with Joe Burrow, given what the Bengals have turned into in his absence? Like, who would you, if I gave you a choice between casting your vote for Daniel Jones as the MVP or Joe Burrow, and you think it's a silly question, it's not a silly question. You can only vote for one. I would think long and hard about casting a vote for Joe Burrow just to bring attention to the fact that you remove Joe Burrow and the entire thing crumbles. That entire organization is a Jenga tower. And Joe Burrow he's not even one of the pieces that you pull out in the whole thing. He's like half of the tower and you knock it out and it all falls. Yeah, good luck, Joe Flacco. And he's going to start on Sunday. The Bengals were so eager to move on from Jake Browning that Joe Flacco is going to start on Sunday. Like, right along with the announcement that Joe Flacco had been traded to the Cincinnati Bengals, it was announced that he will be the starter, or reported that he would be the starter. Man, Cincinnati's in a bad spot. The Mark Sanchez thing. I leave these kind of stories for the guy who precedes me on the air, because quite frankly, he has more of an interest in this stuff and he's also better at presenting these kind of stories. That Mark Sanchez story is wild. And what a turn of events on a Saturday. Right? So you go from Mark Sanchez was stabbed in Indianapolis, of all places. Like, I don't live there, so I can't sit here and speak with great authority. I've been to Indianapolis. It seems like a great city. And look, crime happens everywhere, right? Let's not pick on Indianapolis, but when I heard Mark Sanchez was stabbed in Indianapolis, I was like, what? In Indianapolis, Mark Sanchez is getting stabbed. Like, I didn't know what part of that sentence was more unbelievable. I wouldn't think, when I think stabbings, I don't think Indianapolis. Also, when I think of people to get stabbed, I don't think of Mark Sanchez. So, and obviously the reaction that you're going to have is, oh my God, I hope he's okay. Like, how terrible this is. And then the rest of the story, this is living in the social media age. Right? And this isn't disinformation. He was stabbed. Okay, but this is the issue, the disconnect that happens sometimes with social media. We get the report, right? He was stabbed. It's true. But here's the Paul Harvey rest of the story. He's doing drunken, or maybe more than drunk, maybe a different substance that he was under the influence of, doing wind sprints in an alley and getting into it with a driver of a truck, just like randomly, because he was trying to park in the alley. And then you see the video of him, and you, like, it's black and white, but you could see that there's a dark stain on his shirt. It's wild. But that's what we're kind of missing. Or I guess we've been missing that forever, because that's why Paul Harvey existed. To actually give us the rest of the story that we never heard. We took the information, found out what happened, and we moved on with our lives, and then we didn't give a second thought, and then here's Paul Harvey letting us know the rest of the story, and you're like, oh, that's what happened on Saturday. And it very much was vital to understanding what happened, and still, you don't want to see anybody get stabbed. Like, it's terrible what happened, but is Mark Sanchez as much of a victim as it was initially made out to be? Brett says he's trying to make us forget about the butt fumble. See, this is why I let Jim Rome do this stuff. It's not the way I roll. Jim Rome's better at the TMZ stories and the whatever it is that he does on a daily basis from 1 to 3. 719-247-1313. So there you go. There, I think I answered all the Chad Kelly related questions. That was either from Jim or Chad Kelly. That text that came in, I'm convinced of it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Tuesday evening. It's evening, right? 5 o'clock. That counts as evening. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on your radio, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or whether you're watching the show on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is the same everywhere you go. It's at XTRA Sports 1300. Why am I talking with this pace? I don't know. 719-247-1313 is the text and the phone line if you'd like to give your thoughts on this Tuesday. Perhaps you have thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with hockey being back tonight, and the captain for the Avs is also back in full effect.
I didn't grind my ass off for 3 years to come back and just be a part of the team. You know, you try to win, and we want to put another banner up in the building.
Season starts tonight. Avs in LA taking on the Los Angeles Kings. And when I hear Gabriel Landeskog say something like that, it reminds me of when Nathan McKinnon had his comment about being in the league going on 9 years and not winning anything. That is a tone-setting statement by Gabriel Landeskog. And when he says that, it doesn't just mean, oh, okay, Gabriel Landeskog's locked in, he's committed. I had no doubt about that. But how, if you are a teammate of Gabriel Landeskog's, how can you not hear him say that and go, I haven't been through what Gabriel Landeskog has been through? Right? I haven't had to work as hard as he worked to get back. How can I look this guy in the eyes on the ice every day and not go all out to try and win him and I a Stanley Cup? So having him now for 82 games creates that motivation, that accountability. The Avs are going to be pulling. It's not a win one for the Gipper, but it's like, man, this guy has been to hell and back trying to get back out on the ice, and I'm going to take it easy on this Tuesday night. I'm not going to do everything in my power to help this guy win another Stanley Cup. And it's like those comments from Nathan McKinnon 4 years ago. It sets the tone. The Avalanche have one goal. It is to win a Stanley Cup. And everyone on that team is going to be pushed a little bit harder because number 92 is out on the ice with them. And they know exactly what this guy went through. So that's going to set a tone for this season. That's going to motivate them. That's going to keep them and get no little swoon here. This team is, I think, going to stay locked in for the duration of the season. Now, does that ultimately make the difference between the Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup or not? No. Gabriel Landeskog, the player, might. And that's the thing I'm most fascinated to see this season with the Colorado Avalanche. What does Gabriel Landeskog look like over the course of an 82-game season? Because you saw him come back against the Dallas Stars, and he was one of the better players on the Avs. Just like that. 3 years off, boom, comes back, difference maker. I don't know if I'm not saying he's going to be the MVP or anything like that, but man, if they can get what Gabriel Landeskog was in the playoffs for the majority of the season? And more importantly, can they get it again in the playoffs? Gabriel Landeskog, that may make the difference between the Avs winning a Stanley Cup or not. Just Gabriel Landeskog's presence is going to elevate everybody's game. Right? That psychological aspect of having the captain back after 3 years of grinding it out and the setbacks in his recovery and all that kind of stuff. I think it's fully set in. You know, the playoffs, there's so many other things going on. I certainly think there was an emotional boost when he returned, but there's so many other things going on that I don't know if the Avalanche truly let it sink in how big of a deal it was to have Gabriel Landeskog back. They all know now. If there was any doubt before, they all know now. And I think that's the type of tone that needs to be set with this Avalanche team. They are no doubt a Stanley Cup contender. But as we're trying to split hairs between Colorado and Dallas and Edmonton and Vegas, these four that in any other year, if they existed by themselves, they'd be a shoo-in to win the Stanley Cup. And now they all have to go through each other. When you're trying to split hairs and you're trying to find the difference, what puts it over the top, it could be Gabriel Landeskog that ultimately puts the Avalanche over the top. We'll take one step closer to finding out tonight. 8:30, you can hear the game right here on Extra Sports 1300 as we are once again the proud radio home in Colorado Springs of both the Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets. Here is story number 2.
We're hoping it would be a game to unfold with a lower score. In the end, I think we got the better of them in the trenches, and we finished.
That was Sean Payton's opening statement after the Broncos at the press conference after the Broncos beat the Eagles 21-17 on Sunday. And the lasting feeling that I have coming off of that game is now we know the exact recipe for Broncos success. We thought it was running the ball. We thought it was playing defense. We thought it was cutting down on the mistakes late in football games. But now we've seen it against Cincinnati, how well it worked. Now we saw it against the best team in football on Sunday. And Sean Payne also introduced kind of another wrinkle into this. The Denver Broncos, since Bo Nix, are 1-8 when they allow 23 or more points. Not a very high bar to set in today's NFL. 23 points or more, if the Broncos give that up, they are 1-8. The Broncos want to keep the score down. And how do you do that? You run the football, you control the clock, you control the game, you lean on your defense. We've seen some games, even this season, the Charger game, especially the Colts game, the Broncos are just not built to win a shootout. Bo Nix is not capable at this point. The strength of this team is not in the places that would allow you to match teams point for point all the way up into the 30s. But they shouldn't have to have an offense that does that when you have the Broncos defense, when you have the Broncos running game. Now, there's a bit of news today that it's a little bit of a blow for this new identity or this finally found identity of the Denver Broncos because Ben Powers is going to be out for a while as he picked up an injury in the win over the Eagles. He's going to be placed on the IR due to a biceps injury. Now, Ben Powers, road grading guard, obviously, that is a hit for this Denver Broncos team. But You can work the importance of offensive linemen from the out in. Okay, is this as detrimental to the Denver Broncos as losing Mike McGlinchey or Garrett Bowles will be? No. This should be an injury that the Denver Broncos can compensate for, especially when you look at the stretch of games they have coming up. The 2 New York teams and the 2 Texas teams. If the Denver Broncos are now at this new level because they beat the Eagles, they should be a good enough team to be able to compensate. As tough as it is to see a member of this offensive line go down, they should be able to handle this until he comes back. And it should be all systems go for the Denver Broncos to rattle off a lot of victories over the next few weeks. Now let's go to story number 3, sticking with football. Here's what happened last night.
First and goal at the Kansas City 1. Under center is Lawrence. The snap. Oh, he fell down as he pulled away. Hits the deck. Gets back up. Breaks a tackle. 5. Running in. Touchdown. Touchdown. Jacksonville touchdown.
The incomparable Kevin Harlan on the call for Westwood One Sports. You heard it right here on Extra Sports 1300. The Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Kansas City Chiefs to improve to 4-1. And this year's version of the Kansas City Chiefs exists. If you are a fan of wrestling, you will get this reference: to put other teams over. That has been the utility of the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs. Week 1, Chargers beat the Chiefs. Now the Chargers are the NFL darling. Eagles, that already happened in the Super Bowl, right? And now after the Chiefs cobbled together a couple of wins, now here's Jacksonville. Now everybody's fawning over Jacksonville because they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, they exist to put other teams over. You beat Kansas City, now we're going to fawn over you. We're going to talk about you. And for good reason. Right? Jacksonville's a good team. People should be paying attention to Jacksonville. But what has happened with the Kansas City Chiefs? That they now exist to put other teams over is because they are doing exactly what they banked on the last couple of years for other teams to do. They are now the ones that make the big penalty late in the game, that make the big mistake to cost them a game. They're the team that is not at their best when the game is on the line. Right? The pass interference in the end zone. The fact that they can't get to Trevor Lawrence in the time where he falls down and gets back up and runs, the Chiefs can't stop him. Even with that, the Chiefs have an opportunity to at least get into field goal range to tie the game. Patrick Mahomes delivers a great pass, and Hollywood Brown's head is looking in a direction that I don't know what he was looking at. The Chiefs are now the type of team that they preyed on for the last 2 years. And the reason is because other teams are not afraid of them anymore. It is an opportunity to go against Kansas City. It's not that you have to, or, oh my God, we got Kansas City coming up. That's gone now. That aura of invincibility, it's gone. Now teams are like, hey, we get this win. Look at how everybody looked at the Chargers after they won in Sao Paulo. Look at the way ESPN and national outlets are talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars today. It's an opportunity to get to play Kansas City. You should be eager to do it. And I'm not completely out on Kansas City. I do think you need to buy into Jacksonville. But the fact of the matter with Kansas City is if they're going to get back to the top of the division, if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, they got to figure some stuff out. It's going to be because they get back to being the Chiefs team that is the best prepared, the best coached, the most buttoned up team in the American Football Conference. Because only then does number 15 make up the difference. And far too often this year, everybody else is failing Patrick Mahomes. He's still there. He's still that guy. So if Kansas City can get all this other stuff figured out, they still have a chance to accomplish everything that they want to accomplish. But this idea that they're going to be able to step onto any NFL field the rest of the year and have some kind of psychological advantage over their opponent, which they have had for years, it's gone. It's gone. Teams are eager to play Kansas City now. And Jacksonville looked like an eager team. It looked like they were looking forward to taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and they showed it last night with a big win for them. Who would have thunk two of the best teams in the AFC reside in Indianapolis and Jacksonville? At least that's what their record says they are. 719-24-7, 13-13. Coming up next, we dive further in depth on the Avs. The 5 biggest questions I have for the Colorado Avalanche as they open the season tonight in Los Angeles. Comedian Tom Segura is one of the biggest names in comedy, and he's currently selling out venues all over the world on his Come Together tour, and that tour is coming through our neck of the woods on Sunday, November 9th at 7 p.m. He'll be at the Broadmoor World Arena. You're going to want to be there as well. Get your tickets at extrasports1300.com. Coming up at 8:30 tonight, 8 o'clock, if you want to lock in on the pregame, the Avalanche open the season in L.A., and I have 5 questions for the Colorado Avalanche this year. 5 things that I'm looking out for as this season goes on. And if they answer all of these in the affirmative or answer all of these in a good way, then they could end up hoisting the Stanley Cup when all is said and done. At number 5, I am asking, how deep is this team? And I'm talking about the depths of this team. Right? Not talking about the top 6, talking about the bottom 6. I'm talking about the bottom 3. You know, they've had to elevate Jack Drury, who I liked very much as a 4th-line center. Now he's going to be at the 3rd-line center spot. Logan O'Connor is out for the first part of the season with the injury that he has. A lot of names that you might be unfamiliar with, some waiver claims, some nondescript trades that have been made. They think that they're deeper. Jared Bednar has talked about the depth. I'm really interested in just how far down that depth goes. Are they truly going to be rolling 4 lines? Getting back Logan O'Connor will help. I think he and Drury and Parker Kelly together are great, but if you put all 3 of them, who are you going to put on the 3rd line? So the top 6, they're going to be really good. But the bottom 6, the last deep pairing, you know, you pick up Brent Burns. I think that's a smart move. I think it's a good move, but let's see how it all plays out. So how deep do the Avs actually go is a question that I have for them. At number 4, you could argue this is what cost them against Dallas. Is the power play going to be improved? You know, if there was a scapegoat last year, it was Ray Bennett, the assistant coach. They fired a coordinator. They fired their power play coordinator. They said that aspect of our game is not good enough. And we see this kind of move in the NFL, right? Head coach, general manager want to take the heat off of themselves. They fire an assistant. Well, now we're going to see if that does actually improve the power play. They bring in Dave Haxtell, who I do think is a very good coach. I just don't know if his style, his philosophy of a lot of puck possession and puck movement is what the Avs need to unlock the power play. I think that they need to be, more volume, crashing the net. I think that's what the key is to improve the power play, but they brought in Dave Haxtell. He's the only new addition to the staff, so he's got the power play. So we'll see tonight and moving forward if this is an improved power play unit. Number 3, it's the contract situation of Martin Necas. Now, I don't know what to think about how much money he's expecting because Kirill Kaprizov shattered the previous record. And then the best player on planet Earth, Connor McDavid's like, I'm going to take pennies on the dollar. Connor McDavid is accepting $12 million a year. That is a big blow to the free agency of Marty Necas and all these other guys that are getting ready to get paid. The best player in the world took a pay cut, a massive pay cut. So I don't know how much Martin Necas is going to make. And there was a report from Elliot Friedman that part of why the Mikko Rantanen thing went down the way it did is because Chris McFarland is looking in the future and like, we got to pay Cale Makar an ungodly amount of money here pretty soon. Which I think is like, nobody would rather have Mikko Rantanen than Cale Makar, with all due respect to Mikko Rantanen. I mean, Cale Makar is Cale Makar. But if that was part of the reason why they weren't willing to budge with Mikko Rantanen, shouldn't that still apply? And apply even more to Martin Necas? I really don't think Necas is going to make even close to Kirill Kaprizov money. But does he think that it would be better for him to hit the free agent market and try? Maybe he realizes he's not going to make that. But I got to believe what the Avalanche are offering him is less than his agent is telling him he can make on the open market. Now, perhaps having him be tied so closely to the Mikko Rantanen situation may give him the right perspective, or at least what the Avs would say would be the right perspective to say, hey, you know, Mikko Rantanen thought he was going to break the bank. Mikko Rantanen thought he was going to be able to write himself a blank check, and that didn't happen. But I think that the Avs, they can afford, with everything that is involved in this season, how important this season is, championship or bust, all of that stuff. I don't think they can mess around and drag this thing out to the trade deadline. Because then you're like, well, do you got to trade Necas? Like you traded Mikko Rantanen? I said this last week. I would be on alert. Kaprizov's deal is done. Connor McDavid signed his deal. Now could we see Necas and the Avs come closer to their agreement? Chris McFarland, for whatever it's worth, did say the other day that he is not worried about the negotiation with Martin Necas. But I'm fascinated to see what those numbers look like, especially now with the Connor McDavid deal. No one may be worth more than Connor McDavid, and now Connor McDavid undercut the entire 2026 free agent market. So, when does that deal get done? Is Necas a long-term solution, long-term replacement for Mikko Rantanen, or is he just a rental? I think it would be problematic if he was a rental to keep going back to that well. Number two, are we 1,000% sure that the woodshed is going to be just as good this year as it was last year? Mackenzie Blackwood, when he came over, was exactly what the Avs were hoping for. And there were a lot of underlying metrics with Mackenzie Blackwood to say, hey, if he gets out of San Jose and plays with a decent team, he's going to flourish. And he certainly flourished. And then on top of that, they had Wedgwood. So you want to talk about the depth of this Avs team. They had depth in goal, which very few teams in the NHL have. Are the Avs going to get that level of goaltending from both of them the entirety of the season? I think as long as Mackenzie Blackwood is what he was last year when he was acquired from San Jose, the Avs will be fine. It would be great if Scott Wedgwood was as good as he was last year. And he's going to be in goal tonight, by the way. Mackenzie Blackwood is hurt. Scott Wedgwood will start the season. But with both of them healthy, I still think the NHL, you need a guy in goal. And that guy is clearly Mackenzie Blackwood. So if they get the level of goaltending they got from him, then anything they get from Scott Wedgwood is an added bonus. And then number one, I've been talking about it. What is Gabriel Landeskog going to look like for 82 games? He exceeded my expectation quite a bit when he came back for the Avs last year. He was more of an impact player than I ever thought he would be. So I'm leaving open the possibility that he is an impact player for the Avs for 82 games, but we haven't seen it, right? Because with Gabriel Landeskog and this injury, we've never seen this. We have literally never seen this. I watched last night Trevor Lawrence fall to the ground, get back up, and run it into the end zone for a game-winning touchdown. And I said to myself, I don't think I've ever seen that. But you know what? Somewhere deep in my mind, I think I have. We have literally never seen someone come back from the injury that Gabriel Landeskog had. We overuse the phrase, I've never seen that before in sports. Because we have. We haven't, but we have not seen what Gabriel Landeskog is doing. Can he hold up for 82 games? Can he be an impact player for 82 games? Is Jared Bednar going to want him to play 82 games? How much ice time does he have? And that starts tonight. How is Jared Bednar going to handle Gabriel Landeskog? So those are the questions that I'm asking about the Avalanche going into this season. Again, if they answer in the affirmative to all these, they get Natchez locked up at a decent price. If they do have 3-4 lines, if the power plays improved under Hackstall, if Gabriel Landeskog can be an impact player for 82 games, and if they at least get Mackenzie Blackwood to play at the same level that he did a year ago, I think the Avs are the favorite to get out of the West. But they have company. And the margins between Colorado, Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton, razor thin. If they don't answer one of those 5 questions to the affirmative, it may cost them. In addition to, hey, they got some kind of a thing here with Dallas to get over as well. We can talk about the Avs on paper and all this kind of stuff all we want. There is this team in Texas that keeps foiling them. So they got to figure that out at some point. But for now, Avs got to answer these 5 questions. 8:30 tonight. We dropped the puck on the Avs season in Los Angeles. You can hear it right here on Extra Sports 1300. Air Force hockey is getting the season going in a big way this weekend at Cadet Ice Arena. First on Friday, the Falcons will be taking on, as Frank Serratori so lovingly calls them, the Evil Empire. DU coming in to the Air Force Academy Friday night at 7. Then they will play Colorado College Saturday at 5. It's quite the series to open the season. If you would like to be in the building to watch the Falcons take on the Pioneers, be the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313 and make you text Falcons, because we're going to weed you out. We want to make sure that you got the right team that you're supporting come Friday. So Falcons and your name, too. 719-247-1313. Speaking of the text line, let me get to it with some of your thoughts. Tom says Chiefs got maybe 4 more wins on their schedule. They'll just be another win from now on. I don't know about that second part, because I think last night was a great example of how anybody that beats the Chiefs this season, and it will be more than I think we're accustomed to seeing beat the Chiefs on a yearly basis, they will, and I use the pro wrestling term, put over, right? Like, beating the Chiefs even this year is going to be significant, and teams are going to be looking at it not just like another win, but a win that, hey, if we get this one, we're on another level now. We beat Kansas City. We slayed the Dragon. And look, the Patriots were that team until basically the Chiefs were proclaimed a dynasty, right? The Patriots were that team. But what has happened with Kansas City is that now it's not a game where you go in and you're like, oh boy, we got to play the Chiefs. Now it's, we get to play the Chiefs. And to the victor go the spoils when it comes to beating Kansas City. And you're seeing it with Jacksonville today. You saw it week 1 with the Chargers. The Eagles didn't need any, they got all their spoils when they beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But the 3 teams that the Chiefs have lost to recently are all now looked at in a very different light. So I think there's still a benefit. I don't think it's going to be nothing for teams to beat Kansas City. But it's become pretty clear there are going to be more teams beating Kansas City than we are normally accustomed to. Now, 4 more wins, that's it. I would say no, but I'll be 100% honest with you, Tom, because I always am. I'm having a really difficult time finding the 5th. Because I get it, and you're probably just, picking on me, which it's fair game. Right? That's what I'm here for. I get it. But my thought is, when I first read your text, I'm like, no, Chiefs will win more than 4 games. Come on now. Let's not go crazy. And then I looked at their schedule, and I'm like, I was having a hard time getting to 5. I'll stick with they'll win more than 4 games. Okay. I'm not, in bringing the Broncos back into this. Yes, I have to look at Denver in a different light after this week, and I have to look at Kansas City in a different light. But am I ready to, Freaky Friday this thing and they switch places and now the Broncos are the team to beat in the West and Kansas City is this meddling team that might get in the 7th seed? I can't get there yet. I'm not. And you could call me stubborn, call me whatever you want. But I'm not there. The Chiefs are going to figure this out. The question ultimately becomes, do they figure it out in the playoffs? But to your point about 4 more wins, like, man, if the Chiefs are in a bad way right now, which I think most people would agree they are, that was a bad loss last night. They got Detroit coming up on Sunday. Then they got Vegas. They'll be good. Okay, there's one, right, Tom? We can agree on that. Then they get Washington at home that just flew clear across the country with still slightly banged up Jaden Daniels and absolutely put a beat down on the Chargers. Could Jaden Daniels and company go into Arrowhead and win? Sure. Why not? Then they go to Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, how much are we rethinking Buffalo after the Sunday night game? I don't think a lot, just because it is a division rival. When you lose a game like that and it's to a division rival, you go, okay, give the Patriots their flowers, but let's not, say that everything is wrong with the Buffalo Bills. But they go Detroit, Vegas, there's definitely a win. Washington, at Buffalo, at Denver, home against the Indiana Jones-led Colts. Then they go to Dallas. That feels like another win. Home against Houston, there feels like one. Then they play the Chargers again at Arrowhead. They go to Tennessee. There's a win. Then they host Denver on Christmas, and they close out the season in Vegas. I think there are more than 4 wins there. But you want to talk about the Broncos win being a perspective-altering victory. How about last night being a perspective-altering loss for the Kansas City Chiefs? Now it's like, I don't care if it's Detroit or Washington or Indianapolis. It's Arrowhead. I don't really feel that way. The shield is down. The aura is gone. The Chiefs still have an elite defense. They still have Patrick Mahomes, and they still have Andy Reid. Are they done? No. Are they going to get in the playoffs? Yes. But, Dan Patrick said it in his Above the Noise commentary earlier on in the show. The gap has shrunk. Now it's not the Chiefs on this pedestal and then everyone else fighting for the next spot up. Now the Chiefs are in the mix with everybody. Let's see. This is from the 719. Watching that game, meaning the Broncos game, the Eagles seemed to be a little overrated. They didn't look that great, and that's with the Broncos not looking that great. Look, the Eagles down the stretch of that football game, right, did not look great. But I think that the ability to win close games, right, the ability to win a game despite not being at your best, I think that is the mark of a really good team. Have we seen the best of the Philadelphia Eagles this season? No, I don't think so. So perhaps the timing with the Broncos was good. But I think, the conversation around the Eagles reminds me so much of the conversation around the Chiefs last year. It's like, oh, they don't look that good. I'm not really impressed. And then you look back at the end of the season and they win the division by 4 games. Philadelphia has that kind of a feel to it. I don't want to diminish what the Broncos did on Sunday. But to your point, I mean, how do you could easily counter the Eagles thing with the idea that the Broncos through 3 quarters couldn't do anything offensively. So could both the Eagles and the Broncos come away from that game saying, I think we have more. We're capable of more. And that's what's got to excite you if you're a Broncos fan, because you can look at that game and say, and even go back to the Bengals game. It's like you were great for 2 quarters against Cincinnati. You were great for 1 quarter against Philadelphia. Like, I think there's more meat on the bone here. But you needed a win like that. Whether there is more that the Broncos are capable of or not, you needed a win like that to believe a lot of this stuff, what Sean Payton has been trying to sell you. Maybe there is more. I mean, the next game where the Denver Broncos play 4 really good quarters will be the first game this season. Probably shouldn't expect it to happen against Philadelphia, the reigning Super Bowl champions. But I'm looking at a series of games coming up here. The Jets, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Texans. Want to set expectation for the next month of Broncos football? One of these games, the Broncos should play great from beginning to end. There's no reason why they shouldn't. Like, there'll be spots, right, where I'm not saying you got to shut these teams out. But, again, we have yet to see the Denver Broncos play a complete game for 4 quarters. And I don't think you can get by an entire season and win a division or be a playoff team or win a Super Bowl if you don't at least have one game on your resume that from beginning to end you were clicking on all cylinders. I think every contending team has at least one of those games. Broncos haven't yet. And if you're a Broncos fan, that's an exciting notion. This from the 719. Hey, Ryan. So still think the Chiefs are going to be a better team this year than they were last year? Asking for a friend. This coming from the person that was trolling me when I opened the text line, sent me this morning, Travis Hunter and Trevor Lawrence. It's not looking like they're going to be better than last year. It's not looking like it, but I do think that they're like what I saw. I think it's there. It hasn't happened yet. I think their offensive line is better. I think with the certainty now that they have at wide receiver with Xavier Worthy back and Rashee Rice is going to be back. They may not win more games than last year, but some aspects of this team that were not up to snuff last year should be better. They should be. Haven't shown it yet, though. When it comes to testosterone replacement therapy, you know who the real MVPs are? Synergenics and Low T Center. These guys are also not only the MVPs, they're the OGs, the trusted experts who've been doing this right from the start. They use pharmaceutical-grade testosterone, not that sketchy compound stuff you might get from other places. That means you know exactly what's going into your body and that it's working the way it should. Big win. They accept most major insurance plans. So there was really no reason. You throw on top of it the fact that the test is free. There's no reason. If you've been dragging a little bit, it could be low testosterone. Go in, get tested, find out, and know you're in the right place to get it treated at Low T Center. Go to trtmvp.com. That's trtmvp.com and book your appointment today. Appreciate your patronage. Coming up next, be the Frank Serratori show as they get ready for the Pioneers and Tigers this weekend. And don't forget, Avs and Kings, our coverage from altitude begins at 8. I'll be back to talk about all of it tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.